Welcome to this tutorial on how to use Scenario Manager in Excel. In this Excel spreadsheet, we have some input variables here at the top, a profit and loss forecast right below it, and a target variable of operating margin at the bottom. This is a very simplified forecasting spreadsheet for a new product introduction. And as is the case with MPIs, there is a lot of uncertainty around key assumptions. Using Scenario Manager in Excel is one of the ways to quantify the relationship between input variables and target variables. Scenario Manager is found on the Data tab, What If Analysis. There are actually three options listed under What If Analysis: Scenario Manager, Goal Seek, and Data Table. I covered Goal Seek and Data Table in earlier videos. Goal Seek is great when you want to play around with one-to-one relationships between variables. If we want the operating margin in cell B11 to be $500,000, then what should be my volume in cell B2? Goal Seek comes up with a solution for that question, which you can then accept into your data modeling spreadsheet. Using a data table is great when you want to see the effect on target variable operating margin of changing two input variables simultaneously, like volume and price. 100,000 units at the price of $10 each should provide an operating margin of $200,000, while 110,000 units at $11 provide $350,000 of operating margin. However, we cannot accommodate more than two variables into a data table in Excel. If we want to change all three input variables at the same time, we can use What If Analysis Scenario Manager. Here's how Excel Scenario Manager works. Select the input variables. In this spreadsheet, there are only 3 of them. If you need to, a scenario can contain up to 32 cells. Go to Data, What If Analysis, Scenario Manager. Create different groups of values or scenarios and switch between them. When you start off, no scenarios are defined yet. Let's add our first scenario called Base Case, where we simply store the current values of the input variables, so we can always go back to the base case if we need to. Here in the Changing Cells field, the range of cells that we want to work on is already selected. At the moment, the cells that we want to run scenarios on are listed in the gray area right next to the values: B2, B3, B4. Personally, I like to name those cells so I know what I'm looking at. Click OK and close, and then go up here on the top left to name cell B2 volume, B3 price, and B4 variable cost per unit. This will be very helpful later on when we put our scenarios side by side for comparison in a scenario summary report. Let's go back to Scenario Manager and add a scenario called Low, Low, High. Low volume, low price, high variable cost per unit. Check that we have the right range of cells selected. When we click OK, we can input the values for this scenario. For volume, we input 80,000 units, lower than the base case. For price, $9, lower than the base case. For variable cost per unit, $7, higher than the base case. Next, we add a scenario called High, High, High. Volume of 120,000 units, price of $12, variable cost per unit $7. Then a scenario called High, Low, Low. Volume of 120,000 units, price of $8, variable cost per unit of $5. Now we can apply the magic of the Excel Scenario Manager. Click on the Low, Low, High scenario and then click Show. The input variables from that scenario are now shown in the actual spreadsheet, and we see a negative operating margin of $40,000 in cell B11. The cool thing is that the data tables on the right have also been updated. If we don't like the negative operating margin, then we need to get to at least a volume of 100,000 units at the price of $9, or a price of $10 with 80,000 units. You can click Edit and OK to change that scenario straight away if you want to. If we click on the High, High, High scenario and show that one, we get a positive operating margin of $400,000. If we click on high, low, low and show this scenario, the operating margin is expected to be $160,000. We can switch between showing and editing the various scenarios, or we can restore the base case scenario if that turns out to be the one we want to pursue after all. At some point during the analysis, it might be useful to show what each scenario contains side by side. That's where the Scenario Manager summary comes in. We would like report type scenario summary based on result cell B11. If we click OK, then a new tab is added to our workbook. It has the current spreadsheet input variable values in column D, and then the scenarios in column E through H. Row 6 puts the volume side by side. Row 7 price, row 8 variable cost per unit. Row 10 has the expected operating margin levels for each scenario, showing the large variations in operating margins when assumptions change. The note at the bottom is very important. Values are represented at the time when the scenario summary report was created. Scenario summary reports do not automatically recalculate, so if you change something on the main worksheet, you will need to create a new summary report to see the latest data side by side. Let's make one such change. Data, What If Analysis, Scenario Manager. We will edit the high, low, low scenario to a volume of 140,000 units and show that scenario on the main tab. Then we also assign a name to cell B11, operating margin. We run a new scenario summary, which generates a worksheet called Scenario Summary 2. The current values column, D, now has the updated high, low, low scenario, and the result cell is called operating margin rather than B11. I hope Excel Scenario Manager will be useful for you for planning, analyzing, and forecasting.